Have you ever wondered why your absence burns deeper than your presence ever could? Why a man who once seemed invincible begins to unravel the moment you disappear from his world, not in rage, but in quiet panic? Because your absence is not emptiness. It is reflection. And few men can survive seeing what they've become without your light. He mistook your nearness for permission. He thought your giving meant he could take endlessly, without consequence. He believed your love was an ocean, infinite, forgiving, patient. But oceans drown what they cannot carry. And when you withdrew your tide, he met the naked shore of himself, barren, forgotten, echoing. In that echo, he began to hear something terrifying, the sound of his own smallness. You were never his mirror. You were his myth, the place his ego went to feel infinite. He did not love you. He loved the reflection of his power in your eyes. And when those eyes closed, when your gaze turned to stillness, his illusion collapsed like a cathedral built on sand. Silence. That is your revenge, not born of malice, but of evolution. A silence that hums with knowledge, that watches without need, that no longer asks to be understood. You became the absence that forces him to meet his own shadow, the one he spent his life projecting onto you. You see, a man's obsession is rarely about love. It is about control. He confuses possession with connection, dominance with devotion. But when a woman steps into her dark feminine, when she refuses to be tamed by guilt or softened by pity, she becomes untouchable. And that untouchability is what haunts him. Because he remembers the moments when you did bend. When you tried to please, to prove, to soothe. When your voice trembled with the need to be chosen. Those memories are his proof that he once had power. And now your distance rewrites that history. Every act of begging becomes an illusion. Every tear becomes prophecy. You were not weak. You were transforming. He does not understand that absence is not the opposite of love. It is its final initiation. It is where attachment dies and awareness is born. In your silence, you are no longer woman. You are mirror, judge, and initiation. His ego stands trial before you. You taught him something his mother never did, that affection is not owed, that access is earned, that presence is sacred. And when you took it away, he realized too late. He was never seeing you. He was feeding on the part of you that pitied him. That part is gone now. And what's left is a stillness that feels like death to his ego. You no longer argue. You no longer explain. You no longer play the theater of emotional caretaking. You simply are. And that is what terrifies him. Because men like him mistake emotion for validation. If you cry, they feel relevant. If you fight, they feel desired. But when you do nothing, when you become quiet, absent, unbothered, their sense of existence collapses. He will chase your ghost through other women, searching for the reflection he lost. But ghosts do not return the gaze. There is a sacred cruelty in your withdrawal. Not the cruelty of vengeance, the cruelty of truth. He thought he could keep the fruit and kill the tree. Now he sits in a barren garden, haunted by the scent of something that no longer grows. He may reach out again. They always do. Not because he loves you, but because your absence exposed his dependence. He wants the illusion back, not the woman. But illusions, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. They become smoke, untouchable, intoxicating, fatal to inhale. You, the woman he once called too emotional, too intense, too much, have become silence itself. No resistance, no begging, no explanation. Only distance. And in that distance, you have become myth again, not the dream he possessed, but the mystery he can never solve. He will learn eventually that some absences are permanent baptisms. That when a woman vanishes with her peace intact, she is not rejecting him. she is resurrecting herself. He will mistake your calm for coldness. But coldness is not cruelty. It is clarity. It is what remains when love no longer needs to be proven. Tonight, sit in that silence. Do not text. Do not explain. Let him meet the emptiness he created. Let him feel your absence like a mirror closing. You are not punishing him, you are returning to yourself. He will wander through the ruins of your silence, searching for the doorway that no longer exists. Because when you left, you did not close the door, you dismantled the house. Every word, every apology, every justification he once demanded of you dissolved. And all that remains now is an outline of your former softness, carved in air, unreachable. He feels it when he wakes. That hollow pull, somewhere between his ribs. It is not grief, it is absence pure and unadorned. An echo of his own dependency. For the first time he realizes, it wasn't your love that bound him. It was your asterisk availability. The ease with which you gave him access to your time, your heart, your understanding made him feel like a god. And gods stripped of worship crumble fast. You were never supposed to be his temple. Yet he knelt before you, pretending reverence while feeding on the offering of your devotion. And when the altar disappeared, his ego starved. Now he prays to silence, but silence does not answer. You have become that silence. Cold, infinite. And he does not know how to exist in a world where you no longer orbit him. It is not that you became indifferent. It is that you became aware. Awareness changes everything. It turns longing into observation, pain into distance, history into study. He became a case study of his own projections, and you became the observer. Detached, sovereign still. He keeps looking for your reaction, a sign that he still matters. But you have transcended the language of reaction. You speak now in absence, in still air, in the sound of things unspoken. You've learned that when a woman ceases to perform, the illusion collapses. And in the ruins of that collapse, truth finally breathes. He used to believe he held power because you responded. Every argument, every confession, every tear proof that he could still move you. Now he says your name into the void and nothing answers. No flame, no echo, no softness. Only the slow decay of his own need. What he doesn't yet understand is that this haunting, your haunting, is not about you at all. It is about the reflection he can no longer find. You were his anima projection, the embodiment of his unlived feeling, his disowned vulnerability. He thought he could conquer it by possessing you. But the feminine cannot be owned. It can only be mirrored, and mirrors, once shattered, show nothing but fragments. Now he is forced to face the truth Jung whispered through centuries. The woman he adored was never real. She was his soul in disguise. And when that soul withdrew, he stood naked before the wound he refused to see. There's a strange mercy in this, because every haunting is an invitation. Every silence a threshold. He may either step through, toward individuation, humility, growth, or remain lost, chasing ghosts through repetition. But that choice no longer belongs to you. You were never meant to save him. You were meant to awaken him. And awakening often looks like abandonment to the unready. He calls your silence cruelty because he cannot yet call it consequence. He calls your distance pride because he cannot yet call it protection. He calls your absence mystery because he cannot yet name it liberation. But you know that absence is not a weapon. It is a mirror for truth. You know that your restraint is not fear, it is precision. You know that your withdrawal is not rejection, it is sovereignty. And now, every woman who watches this, listen. Your absence is not emptiness. It is reclamation. It is the silence where your self-respect finally exhales. Men like him return not for love, but for oxygen. And when you stop breathing for them, they must learn to breathe on their own. That is the lesson. That is the haunting. So tonight, do nothing. Do not check his messages. Do not reopen old wounds to prove you've healed. Your silence is already speaking louder than your pain ever could. Let it echo. Let him feel the shape of your absence like a prayer unanswered. He will either rise or rot in the space you've left behind. And neither outcome is your concern. He begins to sense that your absence is not passive. It breathes. It moves through the walls of his days, not as memory, but as presence without touch. He feels it when another woman laughs beside him, when the air goes still before sleep, when silence fills the spaces he used to fill with noise. It isn't you he misses. It's the part of himself that only existed in your gaze. He once mistook your empathy for weakness. He thought your listening was surrender, your softness submission. But empathy in its pure form is a mirror, and mirrors eventually blind those who cannot bear their own reflection. You watched him unveil himself, his arrogance, his need, his performative strength, and you said nothing. That silence became unbearable, because silence reveals what words protect. And now he has nowhere to hide. Your absence does not mock him. It dismantles him. Every woman he meets becomes a reminder of what he destroyed trying to feel powerful. He cannot replicate you because you were never a personality. You were an archetype, the dark feminine embodied. The untamed force that does not kneel. The storm that destroys not in rage, but in stillness. He will remember how you looked at him, not pleading but seeing. How your eyes stripped him down to the child beneath the armor. That is what he truly misses, being seen asterisk. But to be seen requires honesty, and honesty was the one thing his ego feared. He chased validation, not intimacy. He wanted to be adored, not known. And when you withdrew your energy, he realized too late. You were the only one who saw the man behind the mask, and you did not flinch. Now he must face that version of himself alone. There is a sacred cruelty in this design. Because men like him do not learn through comfort. They learn through collapse. They only awaken when their reflection disappears. That disappearance is your gift, even if he curses it. Every man who meets a woman in her full sovereignty is confronted with two paths: to evolve or to repeat. Most choose repetition, the slow decay of unlearned lessons. But a rare few, stare into the void you left and begin to question everything they once believed about love, control, and power. Your absence becomes initiation. He starts to see the pattern, how every woman he's lost was a mirror, how every heartbreak was a doorway he refused to walk through. He begins to suspect that maybe, just maybe, the problem was not the women, but the emptiness inside him. That realization is the first crack in his armor. And through that crack, truth seeps in slow, relentless, merciless. It whispers that love was never meant to feed his ego, but to burn it. That the feminine is not an audience, she is a mirror, and mirrors demand humility. He will resist. He will try to rewrite the story, paint you as cold, distant, ungrateful. Because blame is the ego's last defense against evolution. But late at night, when all his justifications dissolve, he will remember the quiet way you looked at him, the kind of silence that forgives nothing, yet condemns nothing either. Just sees. That is what haunts him most, not your leaving but your knowing. He cannot escape the feeling that somewhere out there, you've already transcended the need for him to understand. That you have moved beyond language, beyond the gravity of his validation. You've entered the realm of women who do not chase, who summon through stillness. And he feels it. Not consciously, but in the body, the subtle tightening in his chest when he imagines you unbothered. The strange ache that comes from realizing your peace no longer includes him. He can sense your detachment like temperature, a cold front of clarity sweeping through the remnants of his delusion. He wants to reach out, but he doesn't know what to say. Because anything he says would reveal the imbalance he tried to deny. He would have to confess that without your reflection, he cannot see himself clearly. And that kind of nakedness terrifies him. So he stays silent, pretending to have moved on, performing indifference while secretly orbiting the gravitational pull of your absence. He watches you from afar, your stillness, your radiance, your composure, trying to decode the alchemy that turned his rejection into your rebirth. He doesn't realize that what he's witnessing isn't mystery. It's mastery. You did not become untouchable by hiding. You became untouchable by no longer needing to be touched to exist. You became the woman who commands without words, who teaches through withdrawal, who redefines presence as distance. And that is what haunts him. Not the memory of your love, but the majesty of your silence. Tonight, do not reach back into the past to remind him of your worth. Let him sit in his illusion until it burns through the last of his pride. Power does not announce its return. It simply is. He begins to sense that time has not healed him. It has only deepened the wound. Because time cannot touch what was never physical. Your absence does not fade with days, it ferments. It grows richer, darker, more potent. It becomes a quiet poison beneath his skin, the slow realization that what he lost was not love, but access to himself. You were the mirror that once reflected his potential. Now, without that reflection, he no longer knows who he is. He walks through his own life like a ghost, performing identity. Every smile rehearsed, every word hollow. He tells himself he's fine, but the silence after his own laughter betrays him. The dark feminine does not destroy by action. She destroys by absence. Because absence is pure power, unbent, untouched beyond reach. Your silence is the unseen hand that reorders him, molecule by molecule, until his illusions collapse under their own weight. He cannot explain why he feels your presence when you are not there. It's because you no longer exist within him as a woman. You exist as an archetype. The anima, the lost inner feminine, awakened only by loss. He cannot unsee you because you are not memory. You are shadow integration denied. And every time he tries to forget you, he remembers the parts of himself he abandoned trying to be enough. There was a time you would have softened here. A time when his regret would have cracked you open, when the tremor in his voice might have pulled you back. But now you know, regret is not repentance. It is ownership disguised as sorrow. He mourns the loss of control, not the loss of you. You've learned the language of distance, how it speaks in pauses, how it disciplines without sound. You've learned that sometimes the most powerful act of love is to let someone taste the silence they created. And so you stay gone. Not to punish, but because there is nothing left to offer that doesn't cost your peace. He used to think you were dramatic, that your quiet was manipulation. He didn't understand that your stillness was the final stage of awakening. That you had stopped fighting because there was nothing left to defend. The truth does not argue. It only reveals. Now he tries to replace you with noise, new faces, new bodies, new conversations. But none of them reach the frequency you vibrated on. They are surface. You were depth. They are warmth. You were fire. And he burns for the difference. He doesn't yet understand that what he misses is not the love you gave, but the reflection of himself he once saw in your devotion. You humanized him when he was performative. You saw him when he was invisible. You believed when he was pretending. But that version of you, the savior, died quietly the moment you realized that healing him was not your purpose. You stopped being the woman who explains. You became the woman who exits. You no longer wait to be understood. You no longer plead to be remembered. Your absence is your boundary, and your boundary is sacred. There is a sacred law in this universe, the law of return. Whatever energy is withheld from you must eventually circle back, magnified. But by the time it does, you are no longer there to receive it. He will feel this law not as punishment, but as purification. Every memory of you becomes a mirror he cannot escape. Every silence becomes a sermon he cannot unhear. He will call it karma. You will call it alignment. But the truth is simpler. Energy never dies, it only changes form. And you have transmuted yours. What once was pain has become sovereignty. What once was attachment has become command. What once was longing has become law. He does not know it yet, but your absence is teaching him everything your presence could not. It is showing him that love without reverence becomes consumption. That control is not safety. That silence is not indifference, it is consequence. And that no man can own a woman who has made peace with being misunderstood. You are that peace now, not fragile but absolute. You move through life without announcing your worth, without performing softness to be palatable. You have become the embodiment of quiet authority, the kind that makes noise irrelevant. And when he dreams of you, because he will not see your face but feel your distance. That invisible space where his ego once lived, now hollow, now holy. He will wake with the ache of recognition that the woman he thought he lost was never his to begin with. She was the initiation he refused to accept. So tonight, do nothing. Do not wonder if he thinks of you. He does. But that is no longer your concern. Let the silence finish what love began. You are not gone, you are untouchable. He begins to understand slowly, painfully, that your absence is not punishment. It is prophecy. The inevitable unfolding of what happens when truth meets illusion. When the mask meets the mirror. When the feminine withdraws her energy, and the masculine is left to face the echo of his own hunger. You were never chaos, though he named you that. You were reflection, too sharp, too still, too honest. He mistook his own distortion for your darkness. But the dark feminine does not distort, she exposes. She is the fire that reveals the shape of the cage. And now, in the dim light of his solitude, he sees the bars for the first time. Every woman before you, every woman after you, he now sees the pattern. The way he pursued softness not to honor it, but to dominate it. The way he sought admiration instead of intimacy. He begins to sense that your absence has done what your love could not. It stripped him bare. It forced him into the alchemy of humiliation, the crucible of confrontation. He feels it when he reaches for his phone and finds nothing waiting. When he imagines your voice calm, detached, not cruel, not kind, simply done. That soundless done rings louder than any argument. Because endings that come without emotion are the ones that never reopen. This is the part of the story no one tells. The woman does not just leave the man, she leaves the version of herself who needed him. That is why he cannot find you. You did not walk away, you vanished into evolution. He cannot follow because he would have to shed his identity, and men addicted to power do not know how to die. You died 1,000 small deaths in that connection. Every time you swallowed your voice, every time you made yourself smaller to fit his comfort. Now it is his turn to face the death he avoided, the death of control. You do not rejoice in this. You observe it. Quietly, from a distance. O sacred, it cannot be crossed by apology or nostalgia. The truth is, You no longer care if he understands. Understanding is irrelevant. You did not rise to be witnessed, you rose to be whole. And wholeness has no audience. Still, he feels you. He feels the shift in your energy, the way your name no longer trembles when spoken, the way your presence no longer exists as contrast to his absence. You have become atmosphere, everywhere and nowhere at once. He sees glimpses of you in women who carry their silence like weapons, who do not chase, who do not explain. He meets fragments of your energy in those who remind him of what he lost, but none contain the original frequency. Because your frequency was forged in pain, and he never stayed long enough to know what pain can create. You have become what Jung called individuated, no longer seeking completion in another, no longer orbiting the gravitational pull of approval. Your detachment is not bitterness. It is balance. It is the point at which the animus within you bows to no external figure, but serves the sovereignty of your soul. You embody both lover and witness, destroyer and creator. You have become myth. And myths are never chased, only remembered, feared, and worshipped in silence. He cannot compete with that. He will try through imitation, through pretense, through stories told to himself that paint you as heartless. But even as he lies, he knows the truth. You are not cruel. You are complete. And completion is the ultimate threat to a man whose ego feeds on unfinished women. He remembers the way you used to care, the way your eyes softened when he was lost, the way you reached for him despite the wounds. He remembers because he cannot imagine such tenderness coexisting with such indifference. But that is the paradox of your power. You do not hate him. You simply stop needing him to change. And to an ego built on control, that absence of need is unbearable. He will call it detachment. You will call it peace. But the truth, the quiet truth that lingers between those two words, is evolution. Every woman who listens must remember this. A man may love your presence, but he learns from your absence. Presence feeds him. Absence reforms him. Your silence is not the end. It is the alchemy that burns illusion into insight. So tonight, sit in that knowing. You owe no closure, no explanation, no gesture of softness. Let the echo of your absence teach what your voice could not. For some men, absence is the only language they understand. And you are fluent now. There comes a point when the haunting softens, not because he forgets you, but because you dissolve beyond the reach of his memory. You become something else now. Not the woman he lost, but the force that redefined what loss means. You live in the quiet parts of his day, not as sorrow, but as standard. Every woman he touches will feel your echo in her skin. Every gaze he meets will fail to carry your gravity. He will not know why. He will only sense that something vast and unnameable has shifted inside him, that he has met something sacred and desecrated it. There is no language for that kind of realization. It lives between breaths, between dreams. It humbles him, because in your absence, he begins to see that power was never in possession, it was in presence. And your presence, once dismissed, now feels like divinity withheld. He wonders where you are now. He pictures you surrounded by silence that bends around your stillness. He imagines someone else trying to hold you and recoils because deep down he knows you can no longer be held, only met. And few men know how to meet a woman who has buried her past self. You became what he always feared, a woman who no longer reacts. You broke the final chain between feminine love and masculine ego. You stopped translating your worth through his attention. You stopped offering softness to those who confuse gentleness with access. And in doing so, you return to your original form, not lover, not savior, but sovereign. Sovereignty is quiet. It does not demand, it does not chase, it does not warn. It simply radiates. The kind of radiance that burns through manipulation, that turns longing into lesson and endings into altars. You have built an altar of yourself, every wound a candle, every silence a prayer. He kneels at it now, though he will never admit it. He kneels each time he thinks of you without bitterness. He kneels each time he wishes he had listened instead of conquered. Because somewhere within him, the masculine begins to remember what reverence feels like. And reverence is the first step toward awakening. But your story with him is finished. It has served its purpose. The wound between you was not meant to stay open. It was meant to reveal the architecture of your becoming. He was the lesson, not the destination. And you were the mirror, not the muse. There will be others. Men who meet you and sense something ancient in your gaze. They will not understand why they cannot play the same games, why their charm disintegrates under your quiet. It is because you no longer vibrate at the frequency of validation. You exist beyond approval. Your love now flows through choice, not need. Through discernment, not fear. Through sovereignty, not surrender. You will not chase, not because you are guarded, but because you are full. You will not beg, not because you are prideful, but because you have learned that begging insults the divine within you. You will not explain, not because you are cold, but because truth does not explain itself. And when someone new comes, if he is ready, he will not feel your silence as threat, but as invitation, the sacred pause that demands presence. If he is not ready, he will mistake your stillness for distance and flee. Either way, your peace remains untouched. Because the woman who has mastered absence fears no ending. There is a moment right before dawn when the world holds its breath. That is where you live now, between endings and beginnings, where no attachment can survive and no illusion can rule. You do not wait for apologies. You do not crave recognition. You have become your own witness. And as for him, he will carry your absence like a scar, not as punishment, but as proof that he once stood before something real and flinched. Every attempt to forget you will lead him back to himself, because that is what you were all along. A mirror demanding reflection. A storm disguised as grace. A silence that sanctified him through loss. Let this be your ritual now. Stand still. Say nothing. Do not dim your light to soothe the blind. Let the world adjust to your brightness or turn away. Because the woman who knows her worth does not argue. She vanishes.